Michael Turner was not a dramatic man. At 38, he had the steady posture of someone who believed in routine, responsibility, and promises. He worked as a financial analyst in Chicago, left home at 7:15 every morning, and returned at 6:10 almost every evening. Predictable, reliable, safe. He had been married to Emily for 11 years. Their marriage, to anyone watching from the outside, looked solid. They owned a modest brick house in the suburbs, had a golden retriever named Cooper, and spent Sundays grocery shopping together before cooking dinner side by side. They laughed at the same sitcom reruns. They argued about small things, dishes, thermostat settings, whose turn it was to call the plumber, but their arguments rarely escalated. Michael trusted Emily without hesitation. Not blindly, but fully. He believed trust wasn't just an emotion. It was a decision you recommitted to every day. Emily had once told him, "You're the safest place in my life." He never imagined she might one day look for safety somewhere else. The changes were subtle at first. Emily began staying late at work more often. She worked in marketing, and deadlines were common, so Michael didn't question it. But the pattern shifted from occasional to frequent. 2 nights a week became 4. She started placing her phone face down on the table. She used to leave it anywhere: kitchen counter, couch cushions, bathroom sink. Now it rarely left her hand. Michael noticed, but he didn't accuse. He explained it away. Stress, he thought. Pressure. He tried to compensate by being more attentive. He cooked dinner more often. He suggested weekend getaways. Emily smiled, kissed his cheek, said she was just tired. But something intangible had changed. It wasn't distance in miles. It was distance in presence. She was there, sitting beside him, yet somewhere unreachable. The first real crack came on a Wednesday evening. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch. Her phone buzzed repeatedly on the coffee table. Michael wasn't the type to snoop. In 11 years, he had never checked her messages. But the buzzing continued. Over and over. Something, instinct, fear, or perhaps the slow accumulation of small doubts, made him glance at the screen. A name flashed repeatedly. Daniel R. The preview notification read, "I can't stop thinking about last night." Michael's chest tightened, as if invisible hands were pressing against his ribs. He told himself there had to be context. A joke, a misunderstanding, a colleague being inappropriate. He picked up the phone. His hands trembled, not from anger yet, but from disbelief. He didn't want to unlock it. He didn't want to confirm what his mind had already begun assembling. For a moment, Michael told himself he wouldn't unlock the phone. Trust, he believed, meant resisting the temptation to look for evidence. But trust also requires safety, and in that moment, he no longer felt safe. He entered her passcode. It hadn't changed. That detail hurt almost as much as what he was about to see. She hadn't even bothered to hide it better. The messages were not ambiguous. They weren't flirtatious in a way that could be explained away. They were intimate, detailed, specific. There were references to a hotel, to a Tuesday conference that apparently hadn't been a conference, to how she felt alive again. Michael's vision blurred. He wasn't crying. His body simply couldn't process what his eyes were reading. 3 months. It had been going on for 3 months. 3 months of late meetings. 3 months of excuses. 3 months of coming home and kissing him goodnight. He placed the phone back exactly where it had been. He didn't wake her. He didn't confront her immediately. Instead, he went upstairs and sat on the edge of their bed in the dark. His thoughts didn't race the way people describe in moments of shock. They slowed down. Heavy, thick, almost mechanical. Was I not enough? When did this start? Did she plan it? He replayed the past months obsessively. The night she canceled their anniversary dinner because of a client emergency. The new dress she bought and said was for a presentation. The unfamiliar perfume he once noticed but ignored. He had trusted her explanations every time. Because he loved her. And because he believed she loved him. Around 2:30 a.m., anger finally surfaced. Not explosive anger, but controlled, simmering, intellectual rage. He wasn't just hurt. He felt humiliated, deceived in his own home. By morning, he hadn't slept at all. Emily woke up beside him, stretching casually, unaware that the world had already... Michael went to work that day as usual. Routine felt like armor. He answered emails. He attended meetings. He nodded when colleagues spoke. But inside, something relentless was unfolding. His mind returned to the messages again and again. He needed certainty. That evening, when Emily was in the shower, he checked her phone again. More messages. More proof. Photos. There was no room for doubt now. No misinterpretation. No innocent explanation. Daniel wasn't just a coworker. He was someone she confided in. Desired. Missed. Michael felt something fracture inside him. Not loudly, but irreversibly. Trust, he realized, doesn't shatter like glass. It erodes like bone. Silently. Painfully. When Emily stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, she smiled at him the way she always did. And for the first time in 11 years, Michael looked at her and saw not his partner, but the source of his deepest wound. Michael didn't plan the confrontation. It happened on a Friday night. Emily was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, smiling faintly at something on the screen. That small, private smile, the one he used to recognize as meant for him, ignited something in his chest. "Who's Daniel?" he asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. Emily froze. It lasted less than a second, but Michael saw it. The flicker in her eyes, the immediate calculation. "Daniel," she repeated lightly. "He's from work. I've mentioned him." Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah, you mentioned him." Silence stretched between them. Then he added, "I read the messages." There it was. No yelling. No accusation. Just truth placed on the table. Emily's face drained of color. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then came the predictable sequence: denial, minimization, reframing. "It's not what you think." Michael felt something inside him go cold. "Then tell me what it is." She tried to control the narrative. "It just happened," Emily said, her voice trembling. "We were working late. I felt lonely. You've been distant too." That sentence struck him sharply. "Distant?" he repeated. She nodded, tears forming. "You're always working. You're exhausted. We stopped talking like we used to." Michael stared at her. He thought of the dinners he cooked, the weekends he suggested trips, the nights he asked if she was okay. But he didn't interrupt. Eventually, the truth surfaced, incomplete at first, then undeniable. It wasn't just emotional. It was physical. Multiple times. Hotels. After-work meetings. A weekend conference that had never required an overnight stay. Emily cried openly now. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Michael felt an overwhelming urge to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because of the absurdity of the statement. Infidelity doesn't go too far. It crosses a line. After the confession, something strange happened. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. Michael realized he was gripping the back of a chair so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't crying. He was disassembling internally. "You look me in the eye," he said quietly. "Every day." Emily sobbed harder. "I never stopped loving you." That sentence pierced deeper than the rest. How could love and betrayal coexist? Michael's mind struggled with the contradiction. If she loved him, why risk everything? If she didn't, why stay? The foundation of his identity, husband, partner, chosen one, felt unstable. He suddenly understood that betrayal isn't just about sex or secrecy. It's about rewriting shared history without consent. And he felt erased, not from her life, but from the version of it she had been living. The argument didn't explode the way movies portray it. There were no shattered plates, no slammed doors. There was something worse: restraint. Emily kept repeating, "We can fix this. Please." It didn't mean anything. Michael sat down slowly, as if his body had aged 10 years in an hour. 3 months, he said quietly. 3 months is not nothing. She reached for him. He pulled his hand away. That small gesture hurt her. He could see it. But it also established something new. A boundary that had never existed between them before. He asked the question he wasn't sure he wanted answered. "Do you love him?" Emily hesitated. That hesitation was louder than any confession. I don't know," she whispered. And in that moment, Michael felt the final piece of certainty slip away. That night, Emily slept in the guest room. Michael lay awake in their bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The space beside him felt unfamiliar, not empty, but contaminated by knowledge. He replayed everything she had said. "You're distant. I felt lonely. It just happened." He examined himself like a case study. Had he become predictable? Too focused on work? Less expressive? Maybe. But he kept returning to one core truth. Dissatisfaction does not justify betrayal. There are conversations before affairs. There are choices before secrecy. At 3 a.m., Grief finally broke through his controlled exterior. Not loud sobbing, but quiet, shaking breaths in the dark. He wasn't grieving just the affair. He was grieving the version of his marriage he believed existed. The version where loyalty was mutual. The following days were surreal. They moved around the house like cautious strangers sharing temporary space. Conversations were practical, surface level. Are you taking the car? Did you feed Cooper? I'll be home late. Michael found himself questioning everything. Not just her, but himself. He felt replaced. Not physically. Daniel hadn't moved into the house, but psychologically. There had been private jokes, secret conversations, emotional intimacy that belonged to someone else now. He noticed subtle shifts in his self-perception. He felt smaller, less desirable, less significant. Infidelity had quietly attacked his masculinity, his worth, his sense of being chosen. One afternoon, while sitting alone in his office, he caught his reflection in the computer screen and barely recognized the expression staring back. A week passed. Emily ended things with Daniel. At least, that's what she told him. She offered to show messages, to delete contacts, to transfer departments at work. She was suddenly transparent in ways she had never needed to be before. Michael watched her efforts with emotional distance. He wasn't sure if he admired the attempt or resented that it came too late. Do you want to save this? She asked one evening, sitting across from him at the dining table, the same table where they had once planned vacations and discussed repainting the kitchen. He didn't answer immediately. He asked himself the harder question first. Do I want to save us? Or do I just fear losing what we built? There was history in those walls. 11 years of shared experiences. Inside jokes. Losses endured together. Plans made for the future. Walking away would not just mean losing Emily. It would mean dismantling. They agreed to therapy. Dr. Rachel Morgan's office was warm, softly lit, intentionally neutral. Michael appreciated that neutrality. Nothing in the room took sides. The first session was uncomfortable. Emily cried often. She spoke about feeling invisible, about slowly disconnecting from herself before Daniel ever appeared. She described the affair as an escape, not from Michael specifically, but from her own dissatisfaction. Michael listened carefully. When it was his turn, his voice was controlled. I would have listened, he said. If she had told me she was unhappy, I would have moved mountains. Dr. Morgan asked a question that lingered long after the session ended. Michael, do you believe this betrayal defines your marriage, or exposes cracks that were already there? He hated the question, because it forced nuance. Yes, there had been routine. Yes, for 2 weeks, Michael had remained composed. Then anger finally surfaced in full force. It wasn't during therapy. It wasn't during a fight. It came unexpectedly, while folding laundry. He held one of Emily's shirts and suddenly imagined her wearing it in a hotel room with another man. The image was intrusive, graphic, uninvited. His hands began shaking. He slammed the laundry basket against the wall. The noise startled even him. Emily rushed in. What happened? What happened? He repeated sharply. You happened. The words spilled out now. Months of quiet suspicion, days of suppressed humiliation, nights of insomnia. Do you have any idea what it's like? He demanded. To replay it over and over in your head? To picture you with him? Emily cried again, but this time he didn't soften. This was the stage no one romanticizes. The stage where forgiveness feels impossible. Where every object in the house becomes evidence of shared history now contaminated by betrayal. Tom did not move normally anymore. Some days stretched endlessly, thick with tension. Others disappeared in a blur of exhaustion. Michael discovered that betrayal rewires memory. Ordinary moments from the past now felt suspicious under revision. Their anniversary dinner from last year. Had she already been drifting then? The weekend trip to Seattle. Was she texting Daniel when she stepped out onto the balcony? He hated how the affair invaded even happy memories. In therapy, Dr. Morgan explained something clinical but accurate. Your mind is trying to regain control by reanalyzing the timeline. Michael understood the psychology. It didn't stop the pain. At night, he lay awake while Emily slept lightly beside him again. They had agreed to share the bedroom, hoping proximity might rebuild something. But during one session, Dr. Morgan asked Emily a direct question. If Daniel had not existed, would you still be here wanting this marriage? Emily didn't hesitate this time. Yes. Michael watched her carefully. There was no visible calculation in her expression, only fear. I was selfish, she admitted. I wanted excitement without consequences. I convinced myself it wasn't real life. That statement struck Michael deeply, because it meant their marriage was real life, stable, grounded, consistent, and she had temporarily stepped outside of it for something artificial. I never planned to leave you, she said softly to him later that evening. That doesn't make it better, he replied. And yet, part of him felt relieved. The affair had not been an exit strategy. It had been escapism. Understanding motive didn't erase damage, but it changed its shape. 3 weeks after the discovery, Michael realized something important. Up until now, he had been reacting. Reacting to shock. Reacting to confession. Reacting to apologies. He hadn't actually chosen anything. One Saturday morning, he went for a long walk alone by Lake Michigan. The air was cold, sharp against his lungs, grounding him. He asked himself the question without emotion this time. If I leave, will I respect myself more? If I stay, will I resent her forever? He imagined life alone, an apartment downtown, shared custody of the dog, explaining the divorce to friends and family. He imagined staying, slow rebuilding, constant triggers, gradual trust. Neither path was painless, but one realization rose clearly above the rest. He didn't want to make a decision based solely on pride. He wanted to make it based on long-term truth. When he returned home, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table again, anxiety written across her face. He looked at her. Not trying again did not feel romantic. There were no grand gestures, no cinematic embraces in the rain. There were rules, complete transparency, shared calendars, phone access, weekly therapy, honest check-ins, even when uncomfortable. Emily complied with everything without resistance. She understood that trust, once broken, required structure before it could ever feel natural again. For Michael, the hardest part was physical closeness. The first time she kissed him after the confession, his body responded with hesitation rather than desire. It wasn't disgust. It was memory interference. Healing intimacy required patience neither of them had practiced before. One night, Emily said quietly, "You don't have to pretend you're okay." "I'm not pretending," he replied. "I'm trying." There was a difference, and that difference mattered. Recovery is not linear. One afternoon, Michael received an unexpected email notification while using Emily's laptop, a work message preview that included Daniel's name in a group thread. It was harmless, professional, no hidden tone. Still, Michael felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. His chest tightened. His breathing shifted. His mind flooded with images he had worked hard to quiet. That evening, instead of suppressing it, he told her, "When I saw his name, it felt like it just happened yesterday." Emily didn't defend herself. She didn't minimize. She nodded and said, "I understand." For the first time, Michael noticed something different in her reaction, not guilt alone, but accountability. She offered to formally request a transfer to another branch. He told her to wait. "I don't want to control your life," he said. "I just need to know you're choosing me, even when it's inconvenient." She looked at him and answered clearly, "I am." It was a simple sentence. But simplicity, he realized, was what had been missing before. Months passed. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but steadily. Michael began to understand that forgiveness is not forgetting, and it is not excusing. It is releasing the expectation that the past can be undone. One evening during therapy, Dr. Morgan said something that stayed with him. "You're not rebuilding the old marriage. That one is gone. You're deciding whether to create a new one with the same person." That sentence felt both tragic and liberating. Michael had been subconsciously trying to restore what once existed, the innocence, the unquestioned certainty. But innocence doesn't return. Only awareness does. One night, sitting on the porch together, he admitted something vulnerable. "I think I love the idea that we were unbreakable." Emily squeezed his hand. "I broke that." "Yes," he said quietly. "But maybe we were never unbreakable. Maybe we were just untested." For the first time, the pain did not dominate the conversation. It coexisted with growth, and that coexistence felt like progress. 6 months after the discovery, Michael realized he no longer woke up with immediate dread. The pain had not disappeared. It had changed texture. It was less sharp, more like a scar, sensitive in certain weather, but no longer an open wound. One evening, he sat alone in the living room, the same room where he had first seen Daniel's message flash across Emily's screen. He studied that memory carefully. It no longer paralyzed him. It saddened him. And that difference told him something important. When Emily came home, he didn't hesitate. "I'm staying," he said. She froze, searching his face for uncertainty. "But understand this," he continued calmly. "I'm not staying because I'm afraid to leave. I'm staying because I believe we're both different now. If that changes, if honesty slips again, I won't fight to hold it together." Emily nodded, tears forming. But this time, they weren't dramatic. They were quiet, restrained, grateful. For the first time since the betrayal, Michael felt that his choice belonged fully to him. Not to fear, not to ego, to intention. Rebuilding did not turn them into a perfect couple. If anything, it made them more honest about their imperfections. They scheduled regular check-ins, not about logistics, but about emotional temperature. They learned to articulate dissatisfaction before it could evolve into resentment. Michael admitted when he felt insecure. Emily admitted when she felt unseen. They practiced uncomfortable conversations instead of avoiding them. Sometimes triggers still appeared. A hotel commercial, a late meeting, an unexpected phone notification. But instead of silence, there was dialogue. Michael discovered something unexpected. The affair had shattered the illusion of guaranteed safety, but it had also forced them into emotional transparency they had never achieved before. Pain had stripped away complacency, and in its place, something more conscious was forming. Not naive trust, earned trust. A year later, Michael met an old friend for coffee. During their conversation, the topic of marriage surfaced. "You two always seemed solid," his friend remarked casually. Michael paused. He thought about the version of himself who once believed solidity meant the absence of cracks. Now he understood differently. "Solid doesn't mean untested," he said thoughtfully. "It means willing to face the test." He didn't share details. He didn't expose Emily's mistake. But internally, he reflected on what he had learned. Love is not sustained by routine alone. Trust is not self-maintaining. Silence is not peace. It is distance waiting to grow. He had learned that betrayal often begins long before the physical act, in unspoken dissatisfaction, in avoided vulnerability, in the quiet erosion of connection. But he had also learned something about himself. He was stronger than he imagined, not because he endured pain, but because he chose his response to it. Late one night, sitting on the porch once more, Michael watched the neighborhood lights flicker softly in the distance. Emily sat beside him, her hand resting gently over his. There was no grand declaration between them, just presence. He thought about the man he had been on the night of discovery. Shocked, humiliated, lost. If he could speak to that version of himself now, he would say, "Don't rush your decision. Don't let pride choose for you. Don't ignore your own pain to appear strong." Whether someone stays or leaves after betrayal is deeply personal. There is no universally correct answer, but there is one essential truth. You must reclaim your dignity before you can reclaim your relationship. Michael understood now that forgiveness is not weakness. Staying is not weakness. Leaving is not strength. Strength is clarity. Strength is boundaries. Strength is choosing a future that aligns with your self-respect. As he sat there in the quiet night air, he knew something with certainty. Their marriage would never again be innocent. But it was now intentional. And sometimes, intention is stronger than innocence ever was.